Afternoon, good evening. I am Gunnar Eichler. I am the founder and head coach of Intensity Endurance. And if you have seen the last video here on YouTube or follow me on social media, you kind of understand I have a very unique approach to endurance coaching and training. Today, we're going to get into more of myself as an athlete, what I've done over the course of my athletic career that has influenced my coaching. I also know that sports is not one size fit all. Just because the training worked for me doesn't mean it works for everyone. And it definitely doesn't mean I coach all of my athletes exactly the same way. So to begin my sports history, I started playing lacrosse when I was 4 years old, and then played a little bit of soccer as well. But around age 9 is when I started swimming. I started as a year-round swimmer. And in high school, I actually quit year-round swimming to run cross country. I was a 4-year varsity cross country runner, and my freshman year of high school, I ran indoor track, and that was the only track season I did. I continued to play lacrosse and graduated high school 2015. Went back to swimming in college my sophomore year. Did 2 broken years of college swimming. Just a lot of injuries and never really strung together any consistency there. But 2 years swimming at VMI, which is a D1 school. And then after the 2017-2018 season, I quickly transitioned to triathlon, and just kind of started to rediscover a joy for athletics again. So I started triathlon in February of 2018. And I think that's really where we get into, what the basis of my coaching and everything truly looks like. So in my triathlon career, I have never until this year done average more than 10 hours a week. So if we go back to when I started in 2018, and every training session is logged, whether it's something strength related, stretching, rolling, walks are often logged unless it's just, going to the store, right? Every swim, every bike, every run is logged. Even if I don't wear a watch, I put it in here because, for a period of time I wore a watch in the pool, but overall I am a very anti-watch in the pool person. So in 2018, you'll see 113 hours. This is just me getting into triathlon. Averages just over 2 hours a week. In 2019, we'll go absolutely over doubled that. So 300 hours, started getting a lot more into it. I did my first Ironman this year, and I signed up for my Ironman the end of June, and it was in September, Ironman Maryland. So again, under 6 hours of training a week throughout 2019. And then 2020 was the COVID year. And as you'll see here in March, April, May, and June, those training hours skyrocketed just because we all kind of had the time to do that. And I would say that throughout this time, really my key sessions was just Strava segments, KOMs, especially on the bike. On the run, I had a little bit better idea of what I was doing. 400 and 800 days were a key staple in long runs. A little bit of tempo and threshold here, but I was a bit naive, and my long runs were just run as long as I could for as hard as I could, like a lot of your average age group triathletes tend to do. And even if I was doing 100-mile bike rides, it was still, unless I was doing it with somebody, it was, find a couple segments on that bike ride and really grind it out. So it's still, even inside the volume, was based in a very high intensity kind of training method. So swimming during this time was little to none. I think until 2023, really, between quitting swim in the beginning of 2018 and kind of picking it back up in 23, which we'll get to, I really averaged around 2K a week. And that was mostly drills and, body position work and some sprints. So it was very generic, but nothing like really grinding fitness. That wasn't the key. The key was just making sure I was still comfortable in the water. So 2020 to 2021, late 2020, I actually found a few races, and that's when I kind of went from that mediocre age group athlete to winning age groups, overall podiums. I won a race overall in 2020, and that was kind of the point where I was like, maybe instead of just doing this for fun, I can be pretty good at it. So in 2021, around March, April timeframe, I actually got a coach, Max Frankel with North Bank Endurance, and he's my coach to this day, bar a brief stint, which we'll get into. But we kind of worked together at my philosophy of training, his philosophy of training. We both knew that high intensity work was essential, and we worked together a lot to really optimize what that meant. So you'll see here in 2021, I mean, again, 466 hours. So that's just under 7 hours, or sorry, just under 9 hours a week. That's very little. But in June, I raced Eagleman and qualified for 70.3 Worlds. And then I had an injury and decided not to go, but instead raced Ironman Maryland, but with the goal of getting that bike course record. And that was a really fun goal to go chase. That was September. And so we'll get into that in a second when we start talking about really what the training looked like to get as fast as I was able to. In 2022, I would say is the year I was most motivated. Probably the most work that I've truly done, and it's the most work that I've done. It was my highest bike volume until this current year, highest run volume as well, and overall just a generally good year of training. And this was kind of the year where my coach and I decided, let's go see if we can get a pro card. So it wasn't, perfect by any means, and it was still just under 10 hours a week average. So 9 hours and 52 minutes a week was what that number came out to. And actually, that's all I really ever needed. In 2023, it was pretty similar. The only difference really is that my motivation for the sport dwindled a little bit. So I think, I got my pro card beginning of 2023, and that's kind of where my motivation to train, well, not to train, but my motivation to race really died out. And I saw that from 2022 to recently, all of those race results stayed pretty stagnant, and there weren't really any big changes, even with my huge fitness gains that I've noticed. So it is a bit of a bummer when you think about it like that, but overall, it's the goals change. And once I got my pro card, I didn't really have that thing that I was really chasing. So I started coaching around late 2020, early 2021, when I had a true idea of what I was doing, and a methodology. And I'm very against the idea of coach just because you're good, or coach just because you can copy and paste a training plan. Like, what do you know and what do you have that's new? What can you offer the endurance sport community that's different from anyone else? And I think, with being a high intensity first process, nobody else is really doing that the same way. And it's very new and innovative in the world of endurance sports. So moving into 2024, that year was pretty much the same as 2023. I think, if anything, that just the motivation to race really died even more, which is fine. I was still around 9.5 hours of training a week in 2024. And then now 2025, this year, it's currently mid-December. And, so we're looking at over 11.5 hours a week of training just this calendar year. And we can see in April, I had my first sprint triathlon of the season, and it didn't go well. And from that point on, it was just thinking about really what did sports mean to me? What did I want to get out of it? And decided that triathlon just wasn't where my heart was anymore. So kind of moved into what I've always been good at, which was the bike. And I've just been riding, a little bit of swimming, but now we're back to just that, working on going fast, body position, technique, and no more of that really trying to chase big fitness goals in the pool. For a while, I got back in the pool in 2023 because making the front pack of the swim in the in the pros is incredibly important. So I got back in the pool 2023 and enjoyed it for a while. And then that joy kind of dwindled along with, how much I was enjoying running and triathlon as a whole. So back into the 2021 season. So everything that I've noticed my career in triathlon, the bike was definitely what I was best at. I was a great swimmer having that background, and I was an okay runner, but it was more of get a lead on the bike and hang on rather than, trying to run for the win. So, a lot of the times the criticism was don't bike as hard, you can run faster. And even the races where I had tried that different pacing strategy, it usually ended the same. I mean, I could give up 3 minutes on the bike and, have the same run pace, the same heart rate, the same everything. So whether I was really, pushing it on the bike or letting myself just relax and keep into it, it didn't really make a huge difference when I was in that 70.3 racing. But we'll see where it really kind of came through was when I raced Eagleman 2021. That was huge for me because I didn't realize just how strong I was getting on the bike, especially off of that COVID year, starting to, take the sport more seriously, actually working with a process plan instead of just going to chase Strava KOMs. So I did this bike 25.9 mile an hour. I had the third fastest bike split on the day. You'll see here, shout out. Up until recently, every bike I've had has had Campagnolo, components on it. So a bit different in triathlon and even modern road racing. So that sub 210, that wasn't even on my radar. I thought a stretch goal would have been 215, right? 25 flat or thereabouts. And that was great. And off of that 70.3 world spot, getting second in my age group. Fast forward a couple months and I had the IT band injury running. And so that August became pretty much just cycling with a little bit of swimming. I pulled out of 70.3 worlds and decided that I was going to race Ironman Maryland. And one of the beautiful things about this Ironman Maryland race was I got that bike course record. So if we look here, we'll see the first half of this bike course we'll go first 56 miles is somewhere in here. And so the first half of this bike course was actually faster than I raced it in a 70.3 just a couple months prior. So the work that I did on the bike was extremely helpful. And that was just in the month of August. So there we go, 26.2. And we're looking at 207 and change, 208 and change maybe. And then around mile 70, 75, I started hitting some real bad cramping, and you see that kind of fell off. And that was just nothing training related, entirely nutrition and electrolytes. It was just, not properly thought out on my end. And, you learn from those mistakes, but it is a bummer because that second half of the bike course was 8 minutes slower than the first half. So the what ifs if I would have held on. With that though, we will get into what were kind of some of those key sessions, just, thinking about training less than 10 hours and getting a pro card. What does that really mean? And what kind of sessions was I doing to really get there? So I think everybody probably be more interested in the bike. So we'll start there. What were the key bike sessions? And really over that month, that August month in 2021, if we pull up some Training Peaks numbers, and we'll get into that in a second. But that August 2021 month was the big one for my cycling. And that's kind of where all of those gains came. So we look at that, and it's 11 hours on the bike. This one was 15 hours, a couple runs here, but that big 10-hour bike weekend, 12 hours, 11, 13, and 12. And so that was all of the work I did. This is week prior to race and race week. All the work I did on the bike, and those were my biggest weeks in general since COVID. And, those were my biggest weeks until probably a couple months ago. So, you think everything else is just pretty bog standard, normal training. And that 10 hours is usually 6 hours of riding, 3 hours of running, an hour in the pool. So when we're looking at 13 hours of almost all riding, it makes a big difference. But what did that training look like? It was definitely atypical. So Mondays and Fridays were easy rides. Tuesdays were crit races. And I just raced the Cat 4-5 local crit on Tuesday nights. And I didn't have a power meter 2021, so I don't really know what that looked like. But the Bryant Park Crit Series is fantastic. Put in 33 miles. The race itself was 30, 40 minutes. So nothing crazy, but if you've done crit races, you know that it's definitely not your normal triathlon training. The big thing comes after the crit race, and that would always be a very high intensity bike ride. So not having a power meter made this quite difficult, but it's going to be something like this, a 5x2. And since there was no power meter, it's just max effort. So we look at that, and it's 5x2 all out, 5 to 6 minutes easy, soft pedaling. That heart rate averaged 174 for a 2 minute. And it takes a little while for the heart to start ticking back up. 173, 173, 172. So that 5x2 was a staple. I think I did that more than anything else, but it could be 3 minutes, could be 90 seconds, fours, but it's just the day after a crit, and then you blast your legs off. So that's Wednesday. Thursday was a pretty standard, anything zone 2, some light tempo zone 3, but nothing crazy there. Friday, like we discussed, was recovery. And then Saturday was really the only, true aerobic work that I did. So that would be, the standard was a 3x20, and it was hot out, which did not help, but 3x20 on the tri bike. And the goal without the power meter was usually it was prescribed at 90% feel. I usually was like 95+% max effort. And then really it was do the first one and do the other two at the exact same effort and try to be faster each time. So the focus there was work on aerodynamics while also being strong. And we look at something like this, 20 minutes, that 26 and change mile an hour. I didn't have a power meter, so don't pay attention to those. That's that Strava estimated number. And I mean, goodness, like almost 30 minutes back, 20 minutes, over an hour. I mean, granted, there was a store stop right at the start of the interval, so I'm sure half of that was sitting outside sipping on a 7-Eleven Slurpee. And then we'll see, these actually got slower, but the goal was to get faster each time. And I probably went a bit too hard to really do that, but that's neither here nor there. I mean, true threshold heart rate on them, so not the zone 3 or sweet spot intentions that they were. But that kind of work, and then Sunday was just a 3 to 4 hour zone 2 ride, and that kind of work is really what built my ability to ride a bike. And I attribute most of that ability to what came on Tuesdays and Wednesdays, and just the response to that, and really getting strong first, and then taking that strength and extrapolating it out over the course of a 4.5 hour race. So that's the key sessions on the bike. On the run, it looks a little bit different. There was always the typical track sessions, but I think the two big ones that I did that are different from most is, one is this lovely park that I ran at a lot, the Swan Lakes, and 3 loops of the lakes, and don't look at your watch. make each loop faster. So start at that high tempo. I think around this time, my true threshold was probably somewhere right around 6:30 ish, maybe 6:25. So I was starting almost on it, and then each loop get faster. So nothing groundbreaking, but by the end of it, you're looking at 171. My true threshold heart rate is around 170. So definitely those last few minutes, you're looking at a VO2 style effort. Very, very hard. Especially, I did not like running at 5 o'clock in the morning, but that's what that was. And then the other work that is honestly the most important thing, and it's something that I do prescribe to any of my athletes that can handle it, is a hill workout. And this is a standard 8, or well, in this case 6 by 40-second hills. And the lap doesn't do it justice because this rest period is 3 to 4 minutes. So I think back in this time frame, I was stopping my watch at the bottom of the hill after I walked down. But run up the hill, jog it, walk it back down, and then I'm sitting there for another 2 to 3 minutes before I go again. And that's allowing that full neuromuscular recruitment. And this type of workout helps those biomechanics, the actual run cadence and the stride and everything to fully click together to allow you to run faster. So something like this is just a non-negotiable. And a lot of people like to sprint up the hill, jog it back down, sprint back up the hill. You want to get that heart rate all the way back down. I mean, you'll see these reps 159, 155, 158. So none of them, except this last one, really top that 160 heart rate average. But that's attributed because I bring it all the way back down. I mean, I'm under 100 before I go again. It's that full recovery, full neuromuscular recruitment, and everything is fantastic. So don't really have anything on Strava to show you as far as swim workouts, but a lot of it is working on the right drills, your body position in the water, the feel of the water, and not worrying so much about how fit are you in the water, but how well you can hold your stroke together, especially under high power and speed. And that was all I worked on for years. That was the only focus, is how well do I float in the water. I mean, before the Ironman in 2021, I think I swam once in the prior 4 to 6 weeks, and I still swam at 57 minutes or something, which isn't world breaking, not groundbreaking times, but for an amateur, it's good enough. Relying on the swim background I had was great, but having a good swim background, A, doesn't make you a good swimmer, and not having a swim background doesn't make you a bad swimmer. You just have to know the right work to do, when to do it, and how to do it. So I think overall, the biggest points are, you don't need the volume you think you need to get where you want to go. I mean, if you're trying to win Kona, if you're trying to, make it on the T100 circuit, you're going to need those hours. That's just not negotiable. But simply getting your pro card, or going to a 70.3 Worlds, or even a Kona, really until those last 2 months or so, you don't need more than 10 to 12 hours a week. If you're doing 20 hours a week and not noticing huge, improvements year on year, then something's probably wrong with the training that you're doing. If, your coach can't figure out how to fit training around your life, right? If you're a busy human being and it's like, I only have X amount of hours of training, and your coach is saying, no, you have to do this or else you can't get to where you want to go, that's just not good coaching, right? Then a good coach is able to take the limits in which they're given and really capitalize the best case scenario on top of those limits. So I had these limits of my work, my life. I can train really, as you saw, on average, probably around 9 hours a week over the course of those 5 years between starting triathlon and getting my pro card. Or if you want to say taking triathlon seriously in 2020 and then getting your pro card at the start of 2023. So that's 3 years, 2020, 21, 22. And then I got it at the start of 23. So that's 3 years. And those are really all of them under 8 hours, under 9 hours, under 10 hours. So right around 9 hours a week of training over 3 years. And that's all it took to get a pro card. I'm not saying it's going to work for everyone, but you can make massive improvements on training by just training 10 or so hours a week. It's not imperative that you really do those 15, 17, 18, 20-hour weeks that we see a lot of age group athletes do, struggle to hold, the motivation, struggle to not burn out, and then just not really get the improvement that you would expect off of that quantity of training. So I think the last thing that I'll kind of roll through is, where was I fitness wise before getting my pro card? So I'm just going to use my 2022 power numbers because I got that pro card after my first race of the 23 season. So that won't be very telling, right? But it's hopefully not as fast as you would think. It's 360 watts for 20 minutes. It's, for 10 minutes, 373. Actually extremely underrated is your 1 minute, your 20-second, that kind of thing. So 693 for a minute, 1500 for 5 seconds. I was around 1200 for 20 seconds. I was over 500 for 2 minutes at the time. But, strong, but nothing crazy. And at that time, I'd never done 300 for an hour, right? So you don't need to be the strongest person. You need to be fit, but you also need to understand how the aerodynamics work. And those kind of 3x20 workouts where, don't have a power meter, just trying to get more aero. Or if you do have a power meter, 85% or race watts and just try to get more aero every time. And, we can go to the run again. Was not a crazy fast runner. That was my first sub 18-minute 5K since high school. Right in high school, I was still haven't broken that 5K time, 17:07. But I think I've done it once since. If we go all time, yeah, that one in 2022 is the only one I've done since, and that actually was in a triathlon off the bike. But even then, 10K, 36:35 that is my PR to date. Half marathon, let's just go 10 miler. So yeah, sub 7 for a 10 miler. I don't know what I was doing on 9:25:22, but that was my fastest. And even then, like 1:05, my fastest 10 miler to date. So running was never my strong suit, but that's where we were. And honestly, by 2022, I still hadn't broken 2 minutes in a 200-yard freestyle. And I preach that is one of the most important things you can do swimming for, any distance triathlon, that 200 freestyle time. Now I'm close to that 150 officially. I think I'd like 152 or something. I did one in a practice last year and haven't really tried since. Maybe I'll get back in the pool more and try to break that 150 finally. But just the insight to my training, and I guess where we go from here. Pretty much just riding a bike. Might do a triathlon here and there, but definitely won't be to the level. I want to spend a lot of my energy there coaching, and I do have goals on the bike. Hopefully working towards that Cat 2 license this year on the bike, and if I can get Cat 1 and see where that goes. Enjoy it, have fun. It makes everything so much better. Performance will be enhanced significantly if you enjoy what you're doing. So even though I was making fitness gains over the last couple of years since getting my pro license, the races were very stagnant. And I wouldn't be surprised if I go do a half Ironman a year or two from now, even if I'm not the same run level or even swim level, that I would probably break a lot of those PRs that I had. So if you're interested in trying to get a pro license, training 10, 12 hours a week, let me know. We can make it happen. Or just hitting goals in general and trying something different. Definitely would be fantastic. So if you don't know where to find me, Intensity Endurance on Instagram, Gunnar Eichler on everything. There will be links down there in the description below. If you haven't watched the last video, it's a lot more in-depth in my coaching philosophy, interviewed by one of my good friends and the athlete that I've coached in the past, and a great videographer, photographer, producer, Nick Marshall. So if you have an hour to kill, maybe next time you're on the train or treadmill, feel free to watch that. And going forward, I will be talking about this kind of thing with my athletes instead of just myself. So look forward to that. More to come. Have a nice